It's a debate that pops up every now and again. We have a legalised cannabis party in the Victorian Parliament and New South Wales, and Fiona Patten, as many of you may know, also ran for the Senate. We're still waiting for those results for the Senate to see whether she was elected as a senator. But it's a debate that political parties, governments around the world are increasingly having to grapple with. And a new survey suggests that many of us in Victoria think it should be legal, with some important caveats. John Ryan is the CEO of the Penington Institute. Good morning, John.
Morning, Richard.
You've commissioned a survey. What did it find, and what did you ask?
Well, we were really, we know that most Victorians support the regulation of cannabis. Most Victorians don't think the current criminalisation approach works. So what we wanted to do was ask Victorians, if cannabis was regulated, what would the regulatory settings look like? Like, what would people support? So that was really what we wanted to find out, to dig into what a regulated market for cannabis would look like.
You say that most people in Victoria do support it. What's that actually based on, John?
So there's lots of different data points, some of which is government data, like the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. It's I think only 20% actually support the criminalisation model according to that data. We also used Redbridge last year, the year before, looking at Victoria only, and it was majority support amongst Victorians in that representative survey as well. The times have basically shifted. People have seen overseas what's been happening, and so support just continues to increase for a different approach. And it's mostly because, most people know someone that's used cannabis. They also acknowledge that there are lots of risks with cannabis, but it's the status quo approach that we've got at the moment that really lacks community support.
So you're looking at, decriminalising for small recreational use, I'm guessing would be the sort of preferred model?
No, I think decriminalisation is one step, but it's not really enough because we've got $1 billion criminal enterprise at the moment, and decriminalisation doesn't do anything about that. So we're actually looking at how to make the most, the safest model available for, for Victorians, learning from the experience internationally. And I think that means, yes, definitely decriminalise for personal use and possession, but also allow regulated, controlled access for adults. So that's the big difference, and it's a learning from North America, particularly from Canada, that if you have a licensing scheme that controls the quality of the product, the distribution, and it's taxed, you can actually really significantly undermine the criminal market and improve community health and safety.
Now, the survey sort of delved into implementation, I guess, of this idea. It found that 9 in 10 favoured cannabis products just to be for adults, so a bit like selling alcohol and tobacco over 18s only. And there was also push for restrictions. What were the restrictions people were supportive of?
Well, I think, it's pleasing to me, actually, that there's quite a lot of consensus in the community about what a regulated model should look like, and it's definitely for 18 plus, but there's also support for no cannabis consumption in public, which I think makes sense, but limits on advertising and plain packaging for cannabis products are very well supported, and I think, interestingly, also big support for controlling the strength of the cannabis that can be purchased from those retail outlets. And that's important because the stronger the cannabis, the more risk of harm. And so the community is actually very aligned, I think, with legal and health experts in many of the sentiments around how to better control this market.
You're with John Ryan. He's the CEO of the Penington Institute, and we're talking about a new survey that shows there's strong support for decriminalising cannabis use in Victoria, and as long as there's some sort of safeguards around it. What do you think? 1300 222 774, or send a text 0437 774 774. John, you spoke about the criminal market. Well, what's your view? Will this completely undermine them?
I don't think we can ever there's no, silver bullet or magic wand or whatever. Criminals will be criminals and they'll always try and find a way. But we know that if we regulate it carefully and tax it prudently, we can have the same sort of success that they've had in Canada. They've been doing it for years now. They've had some very big independent reviews, and it shows that most people actually shift to regulated legal access and leave behind the criminal market, which is a great thing for us, because at the moment the criminal market, it's a tax-free earner for criminals, and it's more than $1 billion a year in tax-free crime. So I think that's really problematic in terms of undermining the rule of law in our community and supporting people who really shouldn't be supported. We should actually be trying to protect the community, and at the moment the only winners out of the current model are actually criminals.
Did you look at, when you did the survey, what people's attitudes were to, say, people who drug driving, for instance, people who are, consuming cannabis and then driving? Was that sort of something that you focused on at all?
No, that wasn't in the survey, and I think that's a really legitimate concern. And we've got that problem right at the moment, because cannabis is really very readily accessible in the community, and there's huge levels of cannabis consumption. It's all happening in secret. That's why people might not think it's happening, but all of the evidence suggests that it's $1 billion+ industry per year in Victoria. So we've got cannabis driving, and we need to actually continue to police that. A regulated market doesn't mean we get rid of our road safety rules. They can continue exactly as they are now.
And have you got a model, a jurisdiction overseas that say, look, we like this one, it should be imported to Victoria. You can take it to the Premier, Jacinta Allen, and say, here you go, this is what we should do. Why don't you have a think about it?
Well, we're spending a lot of time actually at Penington Institute developing a model that's fit for purpose for our circumstances. And it's true, we're impressed by different jurisdictions overseas, but what I really want to do is combine that Australian common sense sort of approach with our particular circumstances. We're not Canada, we're not Denver, we're not California or whatever. I think we've got to have a Victorian specific model. That's the most likely to succeed. But it's true, like the Canadian approach has been incredibly successful, and so why wouldn't we want to learn from that?
One last one. Do you think this government will do it before the election?
I think sooner or later the penny will drop and we'll see significant reform. How long that sooner or later is, I have no idea.
Oh, come on, John. Give us something. Do you think, will you make it an election issue next year?
I would hope that both parties actually, because there's huge support amongst coalition voters as well. So, and 1 in 4 people in their 20s has used cannabis in the last 12 months. This is a mainstream community issue. The people that are behind, I think, are the political class in relation to these matters.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, John, and good luck with it.
Thanks for talking, Richard. Cheers.
John Ryan is the CEO of the Penington Institute.